Hello, welcome to the Jazz, Soul and Funk Collection. I've got a radio show on radiobath.com and I play a range of jazz, soul and funk music. And one of the things I've wanted to do for a while is make a connection with the artists that I play. And there are so many fabulous up and coming artists in the genre. And today I'm very lucky to have both Reuben and Catherine, otherwise known as Bolden, on the show, and delighted to have you. Welcome both.
Hello, hi.
Thanks, it's
Pleasure
nice
to
to
be here,
be
John.
here.
Well, it's great to meet, and I'm hoping over the course of the next sort of 30 minutes or perhaps a bit more that we're going to learn a lot more about the two of you and Bolden in particular. One of the things I want to do is cover a range of subjects. So I want to talk to you about your music, your background, your influences, maybe some of the challenges you faced in your career to date, and some advice that you might give to aspiring new artists. And then, of course, we want to talk about your plans and the future of Bolden, because I know you've been sort of taking off on Spotify. I've been following your streams, and you've exceeded 1 million monthly listeners, which is unbelievable. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite an interesting year. Quite an interesting year.
Well, good. Well, let's get into it. So, the first thing I want to talk about is your music and your creative approach. I think, first of all, let's talk about the development of Bolden. When did it start? And what were the first tracks? And how has it gone since the beginning?
Maybe I'll start with that one. So, Bolden started the first release was in early 2024, so it's a little bit more than a year ago now. Since I got going, actually, because the project started with just me, working with a range of musicians, but principally I would write the tracks and then get a range of musicians to help me with filling in the gaps. And I was very lucky to meet Catherine along the journey about 6 months ago, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But Bolden now is very much the two of us. And yeah, I mean, you know, when I started, a bit more than a year ago, I think on the very first day, 16 people listened to the very first song that I released, which was called Dawn in LA. And I was quite excited that there were 16 people, actually. I was very grateful for those 16 people who listened to the song on that day. And it's quite a dramatic change from today, where it's sort of hundreds of thousands of people every day.
Yeah, cool.
So,
I was just going to say,
yeah.
you're sort of, I didn't mention at the beginning, but would you consider yourself, are you a sort of, would you say it's jazz house music, or how would you describe your music?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, it's jazz house. So it's a mixture of house, drum beats and influences in terms of the rhythm side of it. So in terms of the speed, and so the drum side of it is house, and the bass actually, but then fused with organic elements, a lot more along the jazz side of things. So for example, it might involve, well, the saxophone is probably the most common instrument that we use that is jazz influence. But then we also have flute. We've also used double bass, and really, I suppose jazz at its heart, we're trying to do something that's improvisational in nature, so that we get in some way the repetitiveness of house music, but then also the improvisational and organic nature of jazz. So it's not necessarily entirely about the instrument choice, although we have picked some maybe typical jazz instruments, in particular saxophone. Yes, that's the style of music, I suppose.
And in terms of instruments, I was sort of, I haven't been able to get much information about you publicly, so we're going to have to get more of that out into the public arena. But I think you both play instruments, don't you? I mean, perhaps you can tell us what sort of instruments you both play, respectively.
Sure. So I play piano, flute, and saxophone, and I also sing. And I use all those instruments really. Even the flute can be jazzed up. So I love a bit of jazz flute actually. So yeah, I've done a whole range in the live show. I do all that in the live show as well. So we're constantly switching, and Reuben has the bass and the guitar as well as being a top producer. The amazing, making us sound amazing. That's his job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is it just? I know recently you did a sort of a live concert in London. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. But is it just the two of you, or do you have any support artists, or how did that go?
So it's mostly just the two of us, and yeah, and then we move around and play a range of instruments each. I think I play 5 or 6 different things like during the course of the show. Catherine plays what she's just mentioned, like quite a wide range, and really it's to sort of demonstrate while there's an electronic influence to this music coming from the house side of things, it's really to demonstrate that we are musicians like centrally, and that we can both play a range of instruments, and sort of show people that. So it does make it technically a little bit challenging, in that we're constantly moving, and you've got to sort of always be one step ahead of what it is you're doing next, and what is what you're going to play. Um, but it adds variety. When there's two of us, to watch. If we were just to stand in one place and play one instrument for an entire show, that might be a little bit monotonous and a little bit dull for people to see. So it adds variety in terms of like what we are actually doing, and it adds interest for us as musicians in the fact that we are playing different things. But it is challenging.
So are you producing on stage at the same time? I mean, have you got your laptop on stage with you as well, or
So there is a laptop, but that's really filling in the gaps that we're not playing, and
yeah?
then the bits that we're not playing changes, throughout the set depending on what the instruments that we are playing. So at some point I might be playing we've got a large drum on stage, which is a Brazilian street drum called a surdo, quite often used in samba style music. And we use that really as a replacement for a kick drum, and something's just a little bit it's a lot more interesting sort of style of drums. It's got a lot of resonance to it, and you play it with a beat around your hand. So actually, it's quite an interesting instrument to physically play as well. I don't know, like bringing in those sort of like instruments that are a little bit unique and a little bit different. It's sort of I suppose it's conveying to someone the feeling of the music in a way that they wouldn't get from house music, which you might imagine has been built on a drum machine. So yes, that's the sort of ideas.
So, just exploring the sort of the live performance you did recently. I mean, did it go as smoothly as you planned? I mean, it sounds to me like, bringing all of that instrumentation together, working with the software. It sounds quite complicated. I mean, did it go off smoothly?
Well, I mean, Ruben should answer that really because he was in charge of the tech. I don't know. There was some rebooting of the two laptops a few times. Thankfully, I just take a back seat on that really. Once I've plugged everything in, I can just focus on producing amazing music live on stage, which is my favourite thing to do.
Yeah.
And leave all the headache to Reuben, really. So, but yes, it went amazingly well. We had plenty of time for sound check, so we ironed out any problems that we had, and then just to play our songs to a live audience who knew the songs. They were hardcore, proper fans. They
Yeah.
really understood the music, and yeah, it was amazing.
No, it's good to hear that, and I know it was a sellout, so that's pretty impressive, isn't it?
It's quite gratifying because our audience really, most of our audience are in their 20s, let's say, but between about 20 and 35, looking at the stats. And I sort of feel that jazz from my generation has been stymied as being a little bit, I don't know, old fashioned or old worldy. And I love the fact that we are reinventing jazz for a new generation, and really sort of showing people that how interesting jazz can be, and also just instrumental music in general. The fact that you don't necessarily need to have lyrics to make music interesting. I love that. I love that we're sort of introducing that generation to this music. Yeah. So that for me is an exciting part of the journey, really, of Bolden and of the genre in general.
Yeah, and it's funny on the show. I play quite a few acts who were sort of young and up and coming and introducing the music to new audiences. I mean, I'm afraid I'm a bit of an oldie, and I was. It was amazing for me. I went to see Roy Ayers last year on his world tour, and I don't know if you're a fan of Roy Ayers, but he was making sort of jazz fusion back in the '70s, and
Mm.
To see sort of those artists having an influence on some of the new up and coming artists is great. And I've always been an advocate of jazz, and it doesn't have to be sort of the old image of jazz, trad jazz in the smoky sort of basement. It's not all about that. It's become quite sophisticated, hasn't it?
No, I think that's right. And I think a lot of people have a view of jazz of being people playing standards, a very stationary audience who sits around and applauds politely when people play solos. And that's not necessarily that's not that appealing to a wider audience. And I think that's what I like about the approach that we and related artists in the genre are taking, is sort of moving it a bit beyond that. But it's been, this style of music, as you've alluded to, has been around for quite a long time. It's just, I think jazz has maybe slightly lost its way in terms of like developing an image that's been a little bit jaded, and actually now the new approaches, and there's lots of bands taking it, is showing a younger generation this is great music. It's just great music.
Absolutely. So talking about your music, I mean, do you write songs together, or how does that work?
Yes, we certainly do now. Yeah, yeah. We do it in a multiple different ways, really. Sometimes we do it together in the same room, and start from scratch with a chord pattern and then some beats, and decide what we're going to put over the top. And then other times I'll come up with an idea and send it across to Reuben, and he just makes it sound amazing.
It's a real team effort. I mean, I'm quite intrigued actually, because talking about your sort of Bolden and its development, it sounds like it's relatively new, but I'm guessing that both of you must have a sort of a past history in music. I mean, and this is just a relatively new project. Is that right?
Not for me. I've always been a musician and a producer, and I've produced my own music. And but for Reuben, yeah, it's quite a new venture out of his comfort zone, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, my history is not exactly traditional entrance to music. I mean, I was a businessman, I was a banker, I've been a school teacher, and then I started to get into music production about 2.5 years ago. And obviously, I've had an interest in music for quite a long time, and I'm playing instruments. But yeah, in terms of like getting into music production, about 2.5 years ago. And then that's been quite a rapid journey of learning and developing. And the thing that really surprised me, and I sort of know in hindsight now, is actually that a bit like you, John, my interest in listening to music was always very proactive, in that I love a wide variety of music, and I love listening to just music in general. And actually, I'd accumulated so much knowledge from being so proactive with that for such a long period of time, that actually that gives you taste. Now, it might not be to other people's taste, but it gives you taste, and you know what you like, and that's probably the most important skill, I think, really in music, is knowing what you like, and then having the gumption to go with it, and basically say, right, I like this, and I'm just going to do this. That's surprised me in hindsight. Now that I can see where I am, how important that skill was.
So do you see it's interesting, isn't it? I was saying to Reuben earlier, Catherine, that for my sins, in my day job, I'm a lawyer, which is a lot more boring than talking about music, that's for sure. But I think there are a lot of people out there who have gone into various careers, and their passion or their love is music. And if they can manage to sort of flip into music away from a more sort of traditional sort of profession, then it's a great thing to be able to do. But for you, Catherine, tell me a bit about yourself, because it sounds to me like you've been in music for a while.
Yes, very long time. Yeah, there's not much else I could do. I was always going to be a musician, and that was it. So I play for a lot of weddings and live events. That's predominantly my background. I've also had I still have, I suppose, like a relaxation music company called Delightful Music. So there's 5 albums floating about the internet under the name Delightful Music. And yeah, playing different bands. Like I've always done a real varied mix of music and instruments as well, and different bands that I play in, and going out solo either as a pianist vocalist for weddings or a sax player with the DJ Ibiza style. So really varied career up to now, and this is just another thing totally different from anything I've ever done before.
Well, it's amazing, and it seems to be really taking off. I suppose. Do you mind me asking, how did you meet? I mean, have you known each other for long?
We met courtesy of Instagram. So I mean, when I started Bolden, I was working with a range of musicians, and some I'd record in my home studio here, some in remote studios, but some in entirely remotely, in that they would be in a different country. And I sort of came to the conclusion that actually that if I kept going like this, that music production was going to be quite a lonely job, and I didn't really like that, and that's not what I wanted. And I wanted to develop the live side of things. So I went on the hunt for someone local who was a good musician and understood, and bought into what I was trying to achieve, and that we got on together. And I was very lucky to meet Catherine, in that she ticked all those boxes. We get on really well, and we work very, very well together in terms of like the music that we're writing, and she's very talented. So I'm quite lucky. And then as a result, we do a lot of our music writing together in person, which it's just nicer. Basically, it's just nicer.
Yeah, and you're both based in the north of England, I understand. So
Yorkshire, John.
In God's own country.
I'm not from Yorkshire originally. I'm from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. Catherine's proper Yorkshire.
Yeah, born and bred.
Absolutely, I can hear that, and it's great. Love the Yorkshire accent. It's really good. It was fascinating to hear about. It was funny because I came across your music, started playing it on the show, and loved it, and had to stop myself from playing it too often, to be honest. But no, it's I've really enjoyed what you're doing, and it'd be interesting to know where you're looking to take it.
I mean, in terms of I suppose there's two sides to the future for Bolden. One is the recorded side, and really what we're trying to do on the recorded side is just continue to keep the standard of music where it is, and just edge it a little bit higher each time, and just keep challenging ourselves a little bit to just keep moving forward and developing what we're doing, and also challenging maybe into some of the ideas. We've got a really interesting track coming out next month, which has got quite a strong message in it about sex discrimination in the music industry. So we've
have you got a title for that song?
It is called Would Appear to Be Jazz.
Would appear to be jazz.
Yeah, and and that's just it's just sort of interesting in terms of like moving ourselves forward and challenging ourselves. So that's on the recorded side. The live side of things, that's really only just begun. Myself and Catherine have been working on it. Actually, we worked out the other day for 6 months, in terms of coming up with the idea for the show, rehearsing it, doing technology, learning it all, because it's all quite different, the arrangements from the recorded music. So it took 6 months of work, but now it's at a stage where it's a fantastic show. We're really proud of it. We revealed it to the world for the first time in York mostly to friends and family, and then to the general public in London last week, and it went down. Really, it was very successful, and now that we are planning to roll that out a bit more widely. We've got mini tours of Europe and USA in planning stage for the end of this year.
Brilliant.
Yes, we're really quite excited about that.
I can imagine you going. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It feels to me when I first saw your music, I immediately thought of U.S. West Coast, California. So I think you would go down very well there. I'm sure if you took your live show. Have you thought about doing that?
Absolutely. I mean, USA, we're popular in. I mean, USA is our number one country in terms of like audience, and specifically locations are New York, LA, Chicago, but also Canada, Montreal, Toronto. Yeah, so we're quite excited about going there and showing them the show. Yeah,
And you could even one thing I've noticed is the number of collaborations that go on in the industry. I mean, um, I play a lot of artists, and then through doing my research, I find that some of them have played together and collaborated. Is that something that you're thinking, you would think of doing in the future?
we have done some collaborations already. Actually, some that are one that was released a few months ago, and one, but actually funny enough, involved a saxophonist before I met Catherine. So that felt a bit odd at the time that we were releasing something that Catherine would now play. And we've actually got a collaboration coming up with a rapper who's based in Leeds. I haven't got a release date on that yet, actually, but probably be the middle of this year in terms of when we're releasing it. So we are interested in it, and also it's the same sort of idea of fusing jazz with other styles of music. Like, for example, I said, I'm fusing rap into jazz. So it's the same sort of thought process of just branching out into other areas. But so yes, but that's early days.
Early days, but I'm sure with the number of sort of monthly listeners and streams you've got, it could potentially open doors for you to sort of collaborate with some artists. I mean, I've played artists from all over the world, really, Australia, Europe, in the US as well, and as I say, I think it's great to see collaborations between artists, and it can open doors for those artists and create new opportunities. So I'm sure that's something that's based on your stratospheric performance so far. It looks like your opportunities are going to come your way, I'm sure.
Fingers crossed, John.
Yeah. Right. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask was, about musical influences of both of you. I mean, what about you, Catherine? What were your musical influences when you were young?
Honestly, Roxette and Beverly Craven, which are two poles apart. Anyway, I like all music, and I really like rock music. I played in rock bands growing up. But my degree's in jazz, so I did go sort of down that path, even though while I was doing the degree, I fell out with jazz completely, hated jazz.
Did you?
Yeah. I've fallen back in love, it's okay. But yeah, I still listen to a real wide variety of music. I mean, I love all live music. I think if I'm going to watch a live band, no matter what genre, I know I'm going to enjoy it just because I love musicians playing instruments and it all being live. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, I try to go to gigs when I can, and just have a great amount of admiration for musicians. The work that goes into their art and the passion. My son's trying to make it in the music business as well, so I see it firsthand, and I've got tremendous admiration for musicians, and no, it's good to hear that. And what about you, Reuben? Did you have any particular sort of musical influences when you were younger?
So, I mean, I grew up in Northern Ireland, and I loved Van Morrison.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Van Morrison is very heavily jazz influenced, and in terms of like the style of music. So really, as a young influence, like that was quite formative. But then, I mean, since then, I think like both of you, I just like a very wide range of music, and it sort of surprises me the breadth of music that I listen to. But that's a real positive, I think. Like, the more you understand And there's never a bad concert. There's never some that I turn up to, and I would never see these bands, and then I just love it for whatever. Yeah. So
I
I
think we
love the
have.
variety.
And we have tremendous access to music these days, don't we? I mean, it's funny, but when I don't want to give away my age, but when I was listening to music, I'd hear a track on the radio, and then if I didn't have enough money to go and buy the single, I had to wait for it to come onto the radio again. There was no sort of I'll go and look at that track and listen to it 10 times because I love it so much. There was you just didn't have access to it, so it's a real privilege to be able to use these various platforms to basically try and listen to as many artists as you can.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So, what about for the two of you, challenges you faced in music and in your career? And you must have had challenges, Catherine, in your career through music, and since you've been involved with music, Reuben, yourself. Are there any specific challenges that you've really sort of struggled with, or you've managed to overcome?
Well, we discussed at length actually being female in the music industry. It's quite a rarity in some genres, which is why we did a song about it. And I think we came to the conclusion that I never saw it as a disadvantage, so I didn't try and make it fit into that stereotype. So I can't complain really. I think I've just made it work. And for the Ibiza stuff, people might argue I might get chosen over a gig because I wear a sparkly little dress with my saxophone rather than a male counterpart wouldn't look like that. So I think it can go both ways. You can make it go in your favour, or you can become victim to it if you can't see too far around it. But yeah, I can't complain about it at all.
It's interesting, the whole sex discrimination side of things, because the in some parts of the music industry, like music producer side of things, it's 90% plus are men, and if you look around it, like at an industry level, it's exceptionally dominated by men. And yeah, it's not something for us to fix. Is more just a comment on and say, like, this is the state of the world actually, and people might perceive it as something slightly different in 2025, but it's really not. So I think it's got a long way to go in terms of forwarding. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. There are so many new female vocal artists out there at the moment. I played a Glaswegian jazz singer called Georgia Cecile. Have you come across her? But I played a few of her tracks. Samora Joy. There are lots of young female artists out there, really sort of blazing a trail, and it's great to see. But I suppose the average person in the street doesn't necessarily see the struggle they may have had to get to where they are. But I suppose we're all aiming for an equal playing field so that people just achieve on the basis of their ability at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So, would you is there one piece of advice that you would, there are lots of up and coming artists, and I know advice is always useful and sometimes difficult to come by, but as two people in the music industry, are there any bits of advice that you would give to aspiring young artists who want to get into any genre, but maybe jazz in particular? Have you got any sort of pieces of wisdom you want to share?
My main advice would be to just do it. No matter what you know, or what you think you don't know, or what your experience is, or what age you are, or what gender you are, or anything. It's just basically just to do it. Basically, just do it. Because I think you can always come up with excuses of reasons, things not to do stuff, and actually just do it, and work with the skills and the knowledge that you have today, and then those will develop over time as you do it. But yeah, probably that'd be my main thing, is just to do it.
So follow your passion, really. I mean, it's often easy to sort of the easy option is to think, oh, it's too much of a struggle. But I think in any endeavour, the thing to do is to start and then keep going. And then it's a bit like a snowball, isn't it? Things develop and then opportunities arise. Sounds like that's what you've been doing with Bolden, to be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I think follow your passion. You just can't beat it if it's your passion. And then my other advice would be to practice really hard. It's worth
Yeah,
it.
yeah. It's interesting. That's one thing I'd like to ask you both, actually. I mean, a lot of musicians do complain about practice. I mean, do you love practice, or do you? How do you feel about practice?
I'm very disciplined, actually. I'm not going to say I love it, but I love the feeling of going out there knowing I'm going to play
That
to
you
the
can do it.
best that I can, because I know I've put the hours in and I know the material inside out. I know what I'm doing. And that's where confidence for me comes from. It's no good anyone else telling me that they think I'm awesome if I know I've not practiced enough and I'm not actually quite awesome today.
Yeah. So, how many hours a day do you both do? Does it come down to that? Do you do it practice every day, or?
I mean, obviously, I've got a range of instruments. So, like today, I've only practiced big band stuff on the tenor sax.
Yeah.
So, because I do so many different things, I suppose it's not boring. I'm not practicing the same thing every day. But then just practicing the big band stuff on tenor sax still helps. Bolden stuff because I'm still practicing the instrument and refining the technique of just playing a saxophone.
Yeah, and it's I mean, this idea of of practice is it's not constrained to like just practicing the pieces that you're going to perform in a particular sector, because actually um, uh, I want Bolden to be creative, and being creative means you need to have other influences, you need to have other knowledge and skills. So that's where the idea of practice comes into it, and practice also means the skill of listening,
Yeah.
the skill of critically listening to music really forms part of that. It's not just the performative side of things of being able to mechanically play something. It's being able to listen to something, understand how that's good together, and then work out what bits of it you liked and didn't like and why you liked it. So yeah. I find it really quite interesting because recently I've learned a number of new instruments, and and sort of learning those and going through the process of being a sort of relative beginner, albeit coming from maybe quite a high base.
Yeah.
I love the process of learning how that instrument works and how to make it sound nice. It's quite.
It's all part of evolving as a musician and an artist. When you think everything you do sort of becomes compounded and it is sort of it evolves through your act, really, your artistry. So as you say, the more instruments you play, the more you learn, the different and more improved your music is, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So I want to just finally talk about the future. Really, I mean, I'm intrigued by Bolden and love your music and fascinated in how you've come together and that it's fairly new. I know we touched on it at the beginning, but perhaps we could just talk again a little bit about what your plans are for the future and also how people can get in touch with you, how they can learn more about Bolden. So be good to hear that.
Okay, so I mean the plans really are to keep releasing music. So we're planning to release actually quite frequently, probably monthly is our plan for the immediate future. And we've got a few plans on the recorded side of things, which is also to start working up to some EPs and some vinyl releases. So that's quite exciting and just becomes like a more tangible product.
Are you working with any labels, or do you self-release? Or
we have been working with one label in France called Delicieuse, and we're just about to move to a different one, and I can't quite say who that is just yet. But yes, that forms part of the overall picture in terms of having. I mean, an awful lot of the music world is a team environment, so it's not just us. There are people that help us, both on the label side of things, on the marketing side of things. So there's we've also got a manager. So there's a lot of other people that come into the process.
It's
so,
building that framework, isn't it? I mean, I'm very familiar with that. You need agents for gigs, you need managers who can speak to labels, and quite often having the manager there, it plays a critical role, because in a way they can be the buffer between you and the label, which the artist often needs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just a time constraint. I mean, I've come from a business world, before this, and in reality, I want to be doing the music. And if I end up getting too involved in the business, then I'm not doing the music, which is why I'm here in the first place. So there's sort of a time constraint and a skills and knowledge. So that's quite good. On the live side of things, start exploring the world. We're just in the process of signing up with quite a large booking agent. So we've got, like we mentioned earlier, many European and many US tours planned for later this year. So yes, that's quite exciting.
Great.
Quite exciting.
And people can follow you, I suppose, on various platforms. I mean, obviously they can go to Spotify and listen to your music, but also Instagram.
This is Bolden. TikTok, this is Bolden. The main platform where we end up communicating with people is Instagram. Obviously Bolden on Spotify or on any other. We're on all of the streaming platforms, so also Apple Music or YouTube or Amazon. Really, any streaming platform you find our music.
There's one other thing I want to ask you, and that's the use of the artwork that you use in conjunction with your music, which you see on Spotify. Can you tell me about that and what the thinking is there?
I mean, the art is a key part of the overall picture and image that we're presenting to the world, and it's we've got an artist who's based in Venezuela, who's producing that art. It's very much inspired by a Japanese artist called Hiroshi Nagai.
Yes, that's right.
And that style, it's sort of an idealized 1950s, 1960s California vibe, retro style. It's beautiful artwork.
Yes, absolutely.
And actually, for our next release, which is out on Friday, a couple of days time, we're going to animate that artwork and start to show that world in moving. So it's sort of evolving as we're coming along.
And finally, are you going to develop more of a public profile? I mean, obviously, people can look on the internet and haven't found too much about you, but do you think as things evolve, your public profile will be out there a little bit more?
Yes, I think so. Now we're doing the live stuff.
I love the imagery you use and the sort of the hat and the which you use for the last live gig. So it was good to see that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it did start as being, quite anonymous. But as things developed, you'll now find a lot more content that's got pictures and videos of myself and Catherine on it related to Bolden. And that's with the mindset of, it's us performing live, we're real people. So,
absolutely.
So there's a lot more of that content out there and more coming, John. More coming.
Great. Well, I've got to say thank you so much for coming on to the show today, and it's been great to meet you, and hopefully we can meet in person. I'll have to come along to your next gig, and just want to encourage people to go to Spotify and look up Bolden and listen to some of your fabulous music, and looking forward to watching your continued rise in the music business, and just love what you do. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very
much, John. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.